and we're going to start, but we're just going to give them a few more minutes to join us. And thank you so much for being with us.
Training has been their mentor because she also is a certified community health worker as well. So thank you, Adrian, for your work.
You're
And
welcome,
most
Dr.
of all,
Betty.
thank the students for being in there to make it happen for themselves
Yes.
today. So good luck, and I'll be watching.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Betty. Um, and next, we will have an introduction and overview of the program. Team 1 will present the opioid epidemic, the good, bad, and ugly, followed by Team Two's presentation about obesity and its cultural influences. And then Team 3 will finish it out with food disparities and insecurities. Now, our teams of aspiring community health workers answered the call to become public health workers. They will link the community to healthcare, social support, and social services and other stakeholders to improve population health. And today's webinar demonstrates their commitment to build individual and community capacity by increasing health knowledge and self-sufficiency through outreach, education, and advocacy, while addressing the core competencies of a community health worker. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the podium over to Team 1, who will present the opioid epidemic, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Team 1.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Willis, and I'm a member of Community Health Worker Team 1, also known as Fantastic Four. And proceeding after me will be my teammate, Brandon, Gildad, and Latte. Our topic today is going to be opioid epidemic, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Before I get into the history of opioid, I'm going to give you a little difference between opioid and opium. Opium is the direct source from the poppy seeds plant. And because I grew up in the third world, in the third world, we refer to opium as weed. I never knew about marijuana until I came here. In the third world, they smoke opium just like marijuana in paper or in pipe. And opioid is the chemical substance of opium. Opium is one of the oldest world-known drugs that been around for 5,700 BC, since the Neolithic period. Opium is as used for medical reasons, recreational, and religious purposes. What else do you know opioid is used for? Anybody know what else opioid is used for? You can give me your answer in the chat. I'll reply as soon as possible or at the end of our presentation. Feel free to answer. What is opioid is used for? besides medical, recreational, and religious purposes. Anyone knows what opioid is used for besides medical, recreational, and religion purposes?
I don't think so.
Okay. Opioid is also used for food. And one of the best flavor. You have lemon poppy seeds kick,
Hmm.
and you have in your local grocery store, you have bagel, poppy seeds bagel, which is one of my favorites. And because it consists of opioid content, grocery store use like a minimum amount of poppy seeds on food, because if you consume more of it, you're more likely to fail a drug test, because the more of it consume a lot of opium content. Historians learn from the early civilization that the Sumerian, which is now we call Iraq, from the very early civilization. Historians found on a clay tablet, they saw a foreign word that said Hagil, which means the plant of joy. So the Sumerians were using the poppy seeds, if you want to call it opium, they're all part of the same family. They're using it to feel good, make them laugh, treat pain, and they were happy people. So they decided to share this discovery with the world. They decided to sell the poppy seeds plant on the trade market, where it was sold to where we now call Afghanistan, Syria, and Northern Africa, the what we refer to as Egypt. The Egyptian have a little twist to it, had it as a mixture, something like what we call NyQuil. And if I'm not mistaken, NyQuil do have a content of opium and opium in it. So they use it to treat breast ulcer. They use it to put kids to sleep or relax them. I know during our era, some parent now these days put liquor in the baby milk to help them sleep. But back then, they were putting drugs in the baby food for them to sleep and relax. The population of opioid started spreading around the world, where it went over to Europe. And in Greek, the Greek physician, also known as the father of medicine, Hippocrates, and his student, found out opioid is much more, they form much more uses of opioid when it comes to pain. And they also found out they induce a sleep. So they spread that all over Europe, because at that time, the Roman Empire was fighting a lot of war, and they needed opioid to ease the pain. You had kingdom after kingdom in Europe going to war. And it also spread over next door to Iraq, where the Persian, which we now call the Iranian, there's an Iranian doctor called Avicena. He was skeptical about this poppy seed plant. And he decided he's gonna look more into it. Because he realized everybody was using this plant to feel good, to treat pain, to induce sleep. But he decided he wanted to look more into it to find out the good, the bad, and the ugly of this plant. And he discovered this plant was also used to poison people back then. And he was trying to convince people, if I'm not mistaken, he might be the first one to realize this plant was an addiction. He realized it wasn't people, human being could get addicted to opioid. It can cause a lot of health problems. But he got so glued into it after he discovered that it can also be used as the reverse treatment of being poisoned. And if I'm not mistaken, they use it up to this day for medication called naloxone. That's in philosophy. They use it to reverse overdose. And that was his main focus. He went through the good and the bad and the ugly of it instead of just using it for pain and joy. Let's move to the current generation. Why are we here talking about opioids? Why is it an epidemic? Do anyone know why? An epidemic. Be free to answer. Okay, I guess not. But yes, opioid is an epidemic because a lot of people are dying from it. They're being overdosed. And what happened to a person when they're being overdosed? Being overdosed with opioid, it overwhelms the brain. It interrupts the body natural drive to breathe. Gotta breathe slowly, making drowsy noise and what have you. And as a result, it might cause brain damage. It might cause death. So I decided to do more research and to see if I can find some local resources to help treat our loved ones. And my class is mostly consists of people from New Orleans and the Washington, D.C. area. And in that process, I found a lot of disparity between the two communities. Luckily for me, because I'm in the DC area, and I found this one program called Revised Inc. Peers and Recovery Support Operating Center. The base in DC, and also treat people in West Virginia area. And this program provides full referral to food banks. They help with job training skills. They create an assessment and referral to treating substance abuse and also opioid. They have a workshop every weekdays. If you can't make it to the workshop, they have an online class or a Zoom meeting where they try to edify people on how to treat opioid overdose, and any other substance abuse. And to my surprise, all these great teams that this company does is free. Pretty much free. You don't have to pay anything. So I look over to the next community, which is in New Orleans here. I found the BHG, the New Orleans Downtown Treatment Center. They treat people who are addicted to substance abuse and pay close attention to people who are physical dependents of opioids. And they charge you like about $14, $15 at a reduced price. And I have a list of other programs that help with substance abuse, opioid abuse, and what have you. Just a list of programs that I have here on the slide that shows you. So besides the two that I have, you can choose any one of these to help your loved one. And it's an epidemic. This opioid is epidemic because we are losing 116 people a day. Just a day. And there's a lot of numbers within a year. And I found out there's 11.5 million people that misuse prescription drugs. You know, you're done with it, people passing it on to their friends, selling to them on the street to get extra money. So a lot of people misusing opioid, and it's costing this nation billions of dollars to fight opioid epidemic.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brandon Joseph. I would like to thank you all for attending our annual CHW webinar. Today, we're gathered here to discuss the crisis in America, opioids, the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of it. Now, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the crisis that we are battling here in America, in our communities, and even in some of our families. It has become a problem that we can no longer ignore. Due to the crisis, we are plagued with the aftermath of its destruction, leaving behind blighted property in our community, drug paraphernalia in our neighborhoods and recreational facilities, and even the passing of some of our loved ones due to overdoses from violence and incarceration. In some shape or form, we are all affected by this crisis, which we are here to discuss today. In 460 BC, opium wasn't viewed as being problematic when Hippocrates, the father of medicine, acknowledged it as aseptic in treating internal diseases, diseases of women, and epidemics. Later down the line in 1803, Frederick Sir Turner of Paderborn, Germany, discovered the active ingredients of opium by dissolving it in acid, then neutralizing it in ammonia. The results are what we know today, alkaloids or morphine, which is used in today's hospitals all across the world and even on the battlefields during war. I can speak on this subject matter because I myself know the good and the bad and the ugly personally. I myself was a statistic of pharmaceutical pill mills where doctors saw profit over human health. I was receiving triple the amount of pharmaceutical Percocets. I became addicted to these pills, which I was unaware of the contents. I just knew that my body didn't feel the pain of my wounds. The doctor that I was seeing was arrested for overprescribing the narcotics. I was down to my last doses. I began getting sick, and the associate that I knew happened to see that what was going on with me and offered me heroin. I rejected at first because that wasn't me, but my body erupted. My stomach went to cramping. I had runny nose, teary eyes, sneezing. I gave in to the drugs. My body calmed instantly. I went from paying hundreds of dollars to a licensed doctor to paying $20 street price. I began hanging in the Melfamine housing project, which is known for drugs and drug violence. I became friends with an enforcer of one of the known street gangs. Once he knew of my combat experience, I was offered large sums of money and quantities of drugs for my exchange of protection. The violence began to become a norm. As long as I was self-medicated, it was okay. I was losing myself and my morals, but behind the scene, I was losing my family. I didn't realize what I was losing until my wife addressed my problem and gave me an ultimatum: my family or the drugs. I chose my family. I checked myself into the emergency room in the VA. I didn't know the procedure and didn't want to get sick, so I bought in 3 grams of heroin. I was a mess. I was asking for help and was still up to my old ways. While my wife sat by my side, I was high, holding this woman's hand, thinking I was getting over, but I was getting over, yeah, on myself. The doctors were in and out of the room running tests. After 5 hours, I was admitted to River Oaks detox unit, where I met other users who I sold drugs to. They were in awe to see me in there because I would carry myself well, to the point, if you didn't know me, you wouldn't know that I was even using. A lot of them tried befriending me in order to receive discounted or free drugs. There was even a nurse there who I noticed who was also a user. I'm thinking to myself, man, maybe this ain't so bad. Professionals are using it. If she's okay, hell, I'm fine too. I stayed in detox for 5 days. I was 5 days clean. I felt good about myself. I felt like a big shot. I walked out of that facility with my head up, chest out. My wife picked me up. She was so happy to see me at that point. I knew my wife loved me deeply for putting up with me. 33 days I went by with me hanging back in my neighborhood. I sold drugs that whole time. I got down to my last bags. I looked at them and said, hell, what's one more time? That one more time turned to 7 months of hiding it from my wife. We attended every ball that year, and the alcohol mixed with the heroin gave me away. I was nodding out so hard, my meal looked like it was about to eat me. My wife was livid, but she kept her cool. But when we got home, man, I'd rather be in the house with the devil than that woman. What I didn't know was she was fed up. I went out the next day and came back home to an empty house. I thought, oh, she just out for a few hours. A few hours went by. She didn't come home. I called her phone, and all I heard was, the subscriber you called is unavailable. I knew then I messed up. Once again, found myself back in another facility, this time an outpatient clinic. I was determined to get my family back together. I got on Vivitrol at 30-day shot. I got a job, the tough love that woman gave me, and the shot was the combined miracle from the gods. I've been clean since, and I now pass out syringes and Narcan to prevent disease and overdosing in the same community I was influencing drug users. I now influence recovery. I am now a voice of outreach.
Wow.
Some of the symptoms that you can notice a user are teary eyes, sneezing, runny or stuffy nose, yawning, sweating, chills, muscle pain, nausea, vomiting, cramps, and diarrhea. Some are also anxiety, craving, trouble sleeping, and restless legs. Combined with the other antagonists, I believe that love is another part of the prescription, and self-care. The CDC has 4 guiding principles for overdose prevention. Know your epidemic, know your response, have a clear understanding of cause and characteristic before we tackle them. Make collaboration your strategy. The CDC states that overdose prevention strategies will only be successful if the role of each player is well designed, reasonable, and clear. Nothing about us with us. Public policy should not be written without the insight
Sounds
of
like
people
you
going
too.
through the firsthand. Meet people where they are. Transtherical model, change model, understand one's circumstances without being judgmental. States of change, pre-contemplation, no intention on changing behavior, contemplation, aware of a problem exists, but no commitment to action, preparation, intent of taking action to address the problem, action, active modification of behavior, maintenance, sustained change, new behavior replaces old, relapse, fall back to the old pattern of behavior. And I know that pattern of behavior, like I said myself, I have been down that road. Thank you all.
God, Brandon, that was awesome.
Proud of you, man. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
A true hero.
Cultural competence with opioid addiction. It has been documented that people who are uninsured, unemployed, low-income individuals, or who have had behavioral health problems often struggle with receiving treatment for their opioid use disorder. Also, people find that healthcare providers can do a lot more to minimize the impact on low-income individuals to achieve better outcomes, because these things affect school kids, in achievement. It affects the homelessness. So providers can do a lot more. The Blacks and Hispanics are less likely than whites to complete addiction treatment due to socioeconomic factors such as housing instability and unemployment. And I say that, and the Affordable Care Act can help, stabilize some of these, with the Black communities and things like that, to reduce the barriers, the health barriers. And it also has, the Protection Act, which my teammate will talk about later on. According to the National Library of Medicine, rates of opioid use at the national scale are higher for whites than they are for Blacks. Rates of increase in opioid deaths have been rising more steeply among Blacks, which is like 43% than whites, 22%. So that's like almost half over the last 5 years. More research is needed to understand the socio-demographic, cultural, economic, epidemiologic, and biological factors in opioid care, specific to health disparity population that increase the risk of opioid addiction. And according to the American Psychological Association, in order to combat cultural ignorance, we must first understand the treatment barriers among racial, ethnic minorities, assess beliefs regarding opioid use, disorder treatments, do more intake, questioning when someone is in the hospital or the rehab. And many opioids users are hesitant to accept professional intervention due to concerns of misdiagnosis, cultural mistrust. And I say that because I have seen where personally, I used to work for this pain management physician years ago. And patients would come into the office. Some will be treated differently than others. But I say this is because the patients would be seeking, and I say seeking, it's because they will come to our office, an hour later, they will go to another doctor's office for a prescription. They will go to the emergency room for prescriptions. And that they're seeking what's enough. And they always want the higher dose of everything. They want the higher dose of the OxyContin, the high dose of the Percocet and all of these. But back in 2017, and I know this one, but the governor of Maryland, he declared the state of emergency for the opioid crisis. And he dedicated 50 million, to the federal fund, to overcome this, this crisis. But with these patients were even forging the doctor's prescriptions. But the pharmacists would call and verify. That is how we would know. But when we see the prescription, you would think that is real. Some of them were selling it. Some of them were overusing it. And so at one point, we had to come to where we had to do urine tests on everyone, which is a usual thing, urine tests. But some of them that more suspects than others. And when the urine test comes back, you see that the drug is not in their system. So it was for sale. They would sell it to their counterparts, their friends, to make a profit. So all the mistrust and the cultural norms will be consistent with treatments such as self-reliance or beliefs that pain is inevitable and that it can be managed without prescription medication, disorders and use of alternative. To provide culturally appropriate care for opioid users, the APA states that culturally competent clinicians are aware of their own biases and stereotypes, as well as cultural factors that may influence patients' opioid use, maintenance, abstinence, and relapse. The clinicians seek to gain knowledge and skills to address individuals with variables. And there should be more provider-patient communications and shared decisions to help in the opioid disorders. And I'll ask a question before I move on. Can anyone name a few of the the opioids prescriptions, the most commonly used ones? Or can anyone tell me?
I was about to say fentanyl. I don't know if that's even prescribed.
Yes.
Oxycontin.
Oxycontin's another one.
Yes, that's another one. Great. And can anyone tell me out of those prescriptions, or anyone, which one is more potent than than morphine? Because morphine is given to sometimes end of life stages, people with cancer and different things. So morphine is very, it's very, very potent. So anyone out of those, any prescription, can anyone tell me which one is more potent than the morphine?
Fentanyl.
Yes, fentanyl is. Thank you. Okay, so with the rate disparities of drug overdose, the individual part, the physical and mental health, trauma and resiliency, social, emotional learning and skills, perception of risk, knowledge of public health and harm reduction, withdrawal symptoms and management. And with that, there's no one factor in any level leads a person to use or misuse substance abuse. The interpersonal part, the access to opioids, attitudes and opinions towards substance use and pain management, acceptance of medically assisted treatment, substance use identification and prevention education, access to peer support and family support, naloxone education and carrying, family history of substance abuse. Health starts where we each work, we each play and learn. Conditions of life are not connected to healthy outcomes. Preventing substance abuse requires a combination of upstream and downstream interventions. Access to culturally, and in the community part of it now, access to culturally specific providers, peer networks, and behavioral health services. Prescribers' perception of risk and prescribing practices, drug disposal facilities, access to MAT, culturally specific providers, access to naloxone trainings, public health and harm reduction program. And the societal part of it, the stigma towards people who use drugs, legislation that supports syringe service programs. And they say with supporting the syringe service programs, it's just leaving the clean syringes for people, because dirty ones are where the diseases and all of these are transmitted. So in order, they will have access to clean ones. Policies that promote racial and healthy equity, economic well-being, housing stability, health insurance coverage for mental health care and substance use treatment. Naloxone access protocol for pharmacies, impacts of justice involvement on economic and social advancements. Experiencing stigma can have a significantly negative impact on persons of quality if it can affect their self-esteem, their mental health, and relationship. Stigmatized people are often not recognized as complex human beings. But now I know with a naloxone, that is, to reverse the opioid use, that can help. So anyone can tell me, with the overdose or overabuse of the opioids use, what can happen to someone's health at the moment? And I know we just had, one of the celebrities died of overdose and things like that. So what do you think can happen? What side effects there are? How detrimental it is to their life. They can stop breathing, and it can also lead to death. So with the Affordable Act and the protection, my colleague will continue to explain the HIPAA part of it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being in our community health worker opioid epidemic presentation. I hope you guys are learning a lot of information. I'm going to talk about understanding the ethics and confidentiality issues of the opioid epidemic. So first, I want to start with what is the definition of ethical? If anyone can let me know.
Doing the right thing?
Yes. Absolutely. So just having moral values. So with the opioid epidemic, ethics play a major factor. So we're going to talk about that, HIPAA, mandatory reporting, and what our role as CHWs are. So the lack of ethical treatment for opioid use disorder, holding big pharma accountable. Big pharma is, the pharmaceutical corporations who benefit from prescribing these medicines. Big pharma is kind of the same as big tobacco, whereas big tobacco benefits from people still smoking. They put a lot of propaganda out there so that people can continue to use their products. Acting in the patient's best interest. With big pharma, we have to understand that the pharmaceutical companies give incentives to clinicians and pharmacists to push out these products and pills and other opioids so that big pharma can gain and retain their monetary status. With the clinicians and pharmacists, they are given an incentive. So if big pharma is making money, that means the pharmacists are making money. This is not in the patient's best interest at all. As we heard Brandon say, he was given 3 times the limit of Percocets. and that was not acting in his best interest. So we just have to take that in consideration when we're dealing with someone who is going through an opioid use disorder, knowing that the pharmacists are giving them these medicines, which could lead them down this dark path. Here you see the top 10 big pharmaceutical companies. If you see the number 10 is Pfizer. Everyone knows Pfizer now because of the COVID-19 vaccine. So you kind of see how much they make in a year in their total revenue. So it's like billions of dollars. Pfizer gets $49 billion a year, and Roche, 53 billion. So this just gives a visual to how these big pharma companies really benefit from keeping people addicted. Here's another visual just for you guys' entertainment, I guess. I know it's not funny or anything, but it says local opioid addicts take one daily. And they are really sending people to their grave. Thank God that Brandon was able to combat his addiction so he would not be a part of the statistic. Here's just another visual of the big pharma handing money to the pharmacist or clinician, and then the doctor is giving the patient the drugs, just to reiterate what big pharma stands for. As everyone knows, or if you don't know, HIPAA permits health care providers to disclose personal health information relating to opioid addiction to family and friends in certain emergency or dangerous situations without a patient's permission. As far as the opioid use disorder, providers can share information with an individual's patient's loved ones in certain emergency or dangerous situations, such as when the patient is in a crisis and incapacitated or is facing a serious and imminent threat of harm. This is the only time that the HIPAA law can be broken. According to the Association of the State and Territorial Health Officials, also known as ASTO, many state and territorial associations require mandatory reporting for non-fatal drug overdoses to standardize data practices. This allows them to identify overdose hotspots, determine highly impacted populations, closely follow the trends, and increase appropriate intervention measures. Without these mandatory reportings, we will not know what hotspots to target and where the state or local territories can send in their resources. On this slide, I have a chart of what a mandatory reporting would look like. So different mandatory reportings will vary by state, but this state here in the example is from Arizona. So the first step is to include the definition of the overdose. So yes, the patient did have an overdose. The time frame reporting was within 5 business days. The submission method was the report was sent to the Arizona Department of Health Services. There are 2 parties responsible for reporting this overdose. So the first one is the first response agency. So the information that you will need to have in your report is the first response agency's information, the location where the first response agency encountered the individual, the date and time when the first response agency was dispatched, information about the individual with a suspected opioid overdose, and who died of the suspected opioid overdose. Whether Nexalone or another opioid antagonist was administered at the scene, disposition of the individual. Did they survive or were they pronounced dead? If the individual was transported to
Rashid, can you look in my car before you forget to?
if the individual was transported to the hospital, and the date of the report. The next party who was responsible for the reporting would be a health professional. Health professional information would need to be provided in the report. Information about the individual with the suspected overdose, information about the diagnosis of the overdose, about information about the suspected opioid overdose, what opioid was the patient taking, whether the individual was suspected of an overdose, did they survive or were they pronounced dead at the scene, and also the date of the report. As far as advocacy and community building skills, we do have a SAMHSA helpline. If you do not know, the SAMHSA is a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. This helpline is open 24/7. It is national, so they will have to transfer you to a local agency in order to get you help. During his presidency, Donald Trump declared the opioid epidemic as a health emergency. Another way to engage in community building skills and advocacy is to engage in faith-based communities to help tackle this epidemic. This is someone who has an opioid use disorder, and if they were able to get into a rehab facility that had the same values as them as far as religion or faith, then they are more than likely to complete that program and not relapse, because they're surrounded by people who have the same faith that they do, and they have that moral high ground to stand on in order to help them. The 911 Good Samaritan laws is a law that was in place to, let's say we were at a house party and I'm going through an overdose because I've taken heroin or another opioid. If I called the police to try to get me help, or for them to bring an ambulance to me, I will not be charged with that specific drug crime, like having the drug in my possession. They will basically pardon me so that I am able to get the help that I need. On the flip side, if you know somebody who is overdosing and you found them and we're at this house party, it was at my house, the drugs are at my house, or even if I gave this person the drugs, I would still be pardoned for having those drugs because I'm calling to get this person help. Research suggests that opioid misuse is largely due to the ignorance of prescribed medications. Educational tools must be easy to read and understand, i.e. visuals. So on my next slide, I have a typical pill bottle. These are just ways that people who are not doctors and they really won't understand the medical terminology, how they can protect themselves from an accidental overdose or accidental opioid misuse. So a bigger bottle, this will ensure that the label is easy to read for patients who, older patients or patients who have eyesight problems. Easy open caps. Pharmacies have easy open caps for patients, again, who are older or patients who have arthritis. So you can always ask for one at your pharmacy. However, most of the pill bottles have the child resistant lock so that children do not have an accidental overdose or by getting into the pill bottle. The patient's name is in bold, large print to prevent any type of medication mix-up. On the right side, you see that there's key information, a bulleted list that has all the drug side effects. While doing my research, I tried to find if there was a way to make that easier for people to read, because someone like me, I really don't read the side effects. The only thing that I'm worried about is the dosage and how many pills I'm supposed to take a day and when I'm supposed to take them. So in order to combat the ignorance with the people not knowing, I tried to find like if there was visuals instead of words, because a lot of people are visual learners and that will help a lot, especially with the side effects for people not to have accidental overdose. On the left side, you see the dosage. So it tells you the times are indicated by a rising sun, which is the morning, a red sun midday, a setting sun, which is the evening, and a moon, which is bedtime. So on the side, you will see that it says 1 tablet for the morning and 1 tablet for the evening. 5 steps to prevent prescription opioid misuse. Know what you have. On the last slide, you saw that it had the big, let me go back. It had in large print metformin HCl, a 500 milligram tablet. So just knowing what you have is essential to not to prevent opioid misuse. Because if you're saying that the doctor said it's metformin, you Google what metformin is, and it does not resemble what is in your pill bottle, more than likely there was a mix up at the pharmacy. Do not take it, just take it to the pharmacy so that they can switch out the pills, because you don't know what kind of pills were in that bottle. And if it doesn't match what you're supposed to get, then you're at risk for an opioid misuse if you still decide to take it. Storing it securely. This is having it in a medicine cabinet high up if you have small children, or having it in a lockbox if you have someone in your home that is dealing with an addiction, whether it be alcoholism or any other type of drug addiction. People who are, on their last straw or running out of medicine or running out of their preferred drugs may be looking through the house to find anything that can get them that same high. So in order to prevent a drug overdose that way, just making sure that it is stored securely. The next one is never sharing your drugs. This is the main focus that people should be focused on, because this is where a lot of accidental overdose happens. When you are prescribed a drug, the doctor gives it to you based on your body weight, your height, and different things that go on with your body. And since the doctor knows what your body is, that's why they prescribed you, like the 500 milligrams or even 250 milligrams. It just really depends. So everybody is different. Everybody is different. So in order to not have an opioid misuse or accidental overdose, it is imperative that we do not share our prescription drugs. The next one is take only what you need. Not necessarily for prescription drugs, but I do know for me, when I'm having a really bad migraine and I pop me like an Advil or ibuprofen, I normally take 2, but if it's not working within like an hour, 30 minutes, I will take another 2 to get that migraine to go away. So that is something that people need to understand, is only taking what you need, because then that can cause an accidental overdose with as much dosage is in the pill. So you just want to make sure that you're taking what is prescribed to you. And the last one is turning in what is left. This means that if you have finished your bottle, but there still might be more left over, like if someone is prescribed pain and you're taking your pills, but then your pain has gone away for like long periods of time, and you don't need the pills anymore, instead of storing them in your medicine cabinet and keeping them just in case, go ahead and take it to your local pharmacy and store it in a medication disposable box. Most pharmacy like Walgreens, CVS, they have them, or even take them to your doctor's office so that that accidental overdose or accidental opioid misuse does not happen by someone else in the home or you. Because like I said, the pills and the dosages are based on your body type and your body weight. So if you've lost weight since you've taken it, then that dosage might be a little too high and you can be at risk for an accidental overdose. On this left side, I have a wait a minute, did you know this? Opioids are medications prescribed by doctors to treat persistent or severe pain. Potential side effects can be nausea, sleepiness, constipation, loss of consciousness, shallow breathing, and a slow heart rate, which we've discussed with Brandon and David. Opioids can make your brain believe that they are necessary for survival, which is why many people have an opioid use disorder, because they cannot live without it, just like any other addiction, especially if someone is going through severe pain and persistent pain. The only way that they think in their mind to combat it and to make it go away is to start on opioids. They also go by codeine, fentanyl, oxycodone, and more morphine, like we talked about with Gilda. Some celebrities such as Eminem and Macklemore have struggled with opioid use disorder, and Heath Ledger and Amy Winehouse have died from overdoses. With that, I'm gonna open the floor to any questions that anyone may have. If you guys want to put it in the chat, let me stop sharing my screen so I can see. Are there any questions? I'm not sure if you guys can unmute as well.
Who counts as a mandatory reporter?
Mandatory reporters could be people who work in the healthcare industry. Obviously, the paramedics can count as a mandatory reporter, which is the first responder. So on that chart that I had with what you will put in mandatory reporting, first responders are one of them. Me as a community health worker, I would do a mandatory report and have it under the name of my company or the organization that I'm working with, just so that, like I said, we need to locate these hotspots so that the state and nation's resources can be targeted there and not just targeted, for the whole state, because the whole state might not have an opioid problem, so just that's why mandatory reporting is important. Any other questions? It could be for me or my other teammates. No, well, I thank you guys for listening to us, and I'm gonna turn it back to Miss Adrian. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for such an awesome presentation. And if you would, team one, would you unmute your video so that the audience would have an opportunity to see you all as a team and to appreciate just the information that you provided. It was so inspiring, so informative, and I applaud you guys. Thank you so much for sharing all that information, making us aware and informed about the dangers, the good, the bad, and the ugly of opioids. And it really inspired me. So at this time, we just want to give God glory for all the work that you have done. And without further ado, we want to ensure that our audience is able to respond to any questions if you have any. If not, we're going to take a brief intermission to give Team 2 time to get ready to provide more information during the webinar. They're going to come to you now. Let me show you. They're going to come to you now with their presentation after the intermission, talking to you about obesity and its cultural impact. All right, we're going to come back in 5. That's going to be at 10:40. I look and expect to see you back here. Thanks so much for joining us and staying with us. So let's see. Where are we? That was the opioids. And now we're going to take that 5 minute. Thanks so much. Welcome back. It is 10:40 and I am your host, Adrienne Crowell. And if this is your first time, thank you for joining the Community Health Worker webinar. And Team 2 is up next, and they will provide their presentation on obesity and its cultural influences. This is an interactive session, so feel free to use the chat and the question and answer functions to participate. Now, Team 2 panelists will introduce themselves and begin. Team 2?
Yes, we are here. We are here. Hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody. My name is David. My partner, Ingrid. We out here? We all here?
Okay, we are running into a little technical issue. Miss Adrienne.
We have some storms down here in New Orleans and some flooding.
Oh my goodness. How
And
can I help you?
Can you share the presentation? I just sent you the a link presentation.
Okay, well, give me just one moment.
I'm taking a chance with this light on right now.
Let's see.
If y'all want to know, just New Orleans floods all the time. It's kind of normal. Ingrid, I'm able to get to my email now. Was it sent on the Yahoo account?
It's sent to, yes.
Okay. Okay, it's downloading. Apologize, everybody.
You have it, David? You're able to share it?
Sorry, I forgot to mute myself. No, I have the rough draft. It won't let me pull up the new one.
It won't let you pull up the new one?
No, the one I got off the email is the rough draft.
Okay. 1 second.
Thank you all for waiting patiently. We should have this fixed in just a few moments.
Okay, let me see. I just converted it to a PDF. Let me see. All right. So it's saved as a PDF instead, which is unfortunate because I had some wonderful things that would have been beneficial to
I did get the updated ones that from April 6th. That's the one I was able to pull up.
No,
Okay.
no. You weren't able to pull up the one from today?
That one was a rough draft.
We are the Guardians of Wellness Group 2, and we are so grateful that you guys are here joining us. We are going to be doing a presentation on obesity, just viewing the culture and the history of different things that have gone on in society and its effects on obesity. Obesity is not the epidemic of obesity is not something that just happened to be happenstance. There are many factors contributing into it outside of just a person's personal decisions or just their genetics. So we're going to discuss some of the things in society that contributes to obesity. But before we get started, we're going to introduce our group members. I am Ingrid Jones, and my group members are
Ladies first.
I'm Letitia Gallery.
And I'm David Gonzalez. We're out here in New Orleans, the best city on earth.
yes, and we thank you guys for being so patient with us. So we are going to proceed. Next slide. Thank you, sir. I'm going to follow along here since it's so small on there.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's there. It's just so small on my screen. So I'm going to be looking at my screen here. There's been a drastic shift in the phenotype of the average American. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like in the 60s and the 70s, everyone was so fit. You know, you look at those old Soul Train videos and even just old movies, everyone's waistline was a lot smaller. People used to grow food in their backyards. There were moms and pop stores. People walked more to get where they're going. And there's just been a drastic change of the landscape of America. You know, urban communities, not just urban communities, but suburban communities and just neighborhoods have been growing and developing. More people are driving to places. There's been a culture of convenience in America. And we're going to talk about how some of those things, such as convenience stores, fast food restaurants, and superstores, prepackaged processed foods and plus size meals, and value bulk items, and how they have become the standard contributing to obesity in America. Next slide. You should just be able to hit enter. Okay. The influence of obesity, the influence of American culture on obesity. In this presentation, you will learn the health ramifications of cultural and traditional eating standards, social and cultural influences contributing to obesity in America, how marketing and promotion contributes to obesophobia, bulimia, anorexia, and other mental health conditions affecting individuals, the effects of the introduction of fast food into American society and its direct correlation to physical ailments in America. And we're going to talk about interventions to support healthy weight. Next slide. So, obesity is an epidemic, just like COVID, but worse. very much so worse than COVID. So we're just hoping and praying that at some point in this lifetime that we attack the things that are causing obesity in our country just as much as we're attacking COVID because it is deadly. Living to eat versus eating to live. When considering food and culture, what comes to mind, guys? For me, being from New Orleans, is very similar to this picture here. This looks like another version of a crawfish boil. We'd have some sausage and potatoes and corn in there. That's our culture. That's our experience. What about you guys? Do you guys have any cultural experiences or thoughts or ideas when it comes to food as it relates to your culture? All righty, moving along. Well, as far as New Orleans food and culture is concerned, we already know it's not all that healthy. Not so much. Speaking of New Orleans, yes, we definitely live to eat. Can anybody pronounce that French term there on your screen? Click it one more time for me, sir. Hey, yes, we have a culture that's just full of French, Spanish, Italian, African, Caribbean. And so we have a wealth of different things that contribute to the New Orleans language. So let's say le bon ton, let the good times roll. And that's is our approach that we take to food in New Orleans. We are going to eat. We live to eat. We have so many things that go on as far as our culture is concerned. Miss Latasia,
Yes, ma'am.
you mind speaking on the culture of these points that we have here?
Okay, so for the Fest Galore, I'm happy that it said Galore because we have Jazz Fest, we have Essence Festival, we have Gretna Heritage Festival, we have a Chicken Wing Festival, now we have a Vaccine Festival. We have all types of festivals that involves so much eating, so many different types of food from different cultures, because New Orleans is nothing but a melting pot. We are a big group of just a whole bunch of different type of cultures. So with all those fests that's going on, including the holidays, because we eat gumbo every holiday, doesn't matter what holiday it is, sometimes birthday parties and all. For me, winter, spring, doesn't matter what season it is, I want my gumbo. But that's just a part of our culture. We have a lot of festivals that has a lot of food that's connected to it.
And so New Orleans, despite, the crime rate and everything, it just remains a top vacation, and primarily because of the food, as well as no call for alcohol. I don't know about y'all cities, but our city is the best because there's no last call. I didn't find out about that until I went out of town. And so in letting the good times roll and food being such a central focus, oh, I'm sorry, next slide, please. And in letting the good times roll, we have the culture of food. It's a sought after profession in New Orleans. We have so many famous chefs. This is one of the main ones, Chef Emerald. He has TV shows and seasons that he sells and different things like that. There's so many things that we're known for: the po' boys, the gumbo, the red beans, the jambalaya, the etouffee. You have your delicacies, your boiled seafood, the crawfish, your andouille and gator sausage. So food is everything here. It's everything. Thank you. Next slide. With a restaurant on every corner, there's no shortage from traditional New Orleans cuisine to Caribbean, Italian, Mexican, Asian, and everything in between. But many New Orleans natives remain faithful to long-standing traditions. The Red Bean Monday, every Monday, most people in New Orleans are cooking red beans. Every Friday, we got seafood and gumbo, even though most of us locals have it only during the holidays, and restaurants are served year round. Okay, and so with these standing traditions, we're bringing the old way of eating into today. And just because it was done for generations doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for us. Next slide. So what local cuisine is specific to your guys' hometown? Do you have anything like crawfish that's specific to your hometowns? All right, moving along. Next slide. Yes. So on the next slide, we have some statistics and what living to eat does to New Orleans citizens. In 2019, the annual State of Obesity report stated that Louisiana had the highest rate of adult obesity. 12.7% had diabetes. We were the fifth highest in the nation in 2019. 39.9 had hypertension, the fourth highest in the United States. They found that African Americans in Louisiana were more likely than whites and Latinos to be obese, with adult rates for Blacks at 42.5%, compared to 39.9% for whites and 30% for Latinos. In 2020, Louisiana ranked in the top 20 for obesity, making residents more susceptible to coronavirus complications. Okay. In April 2020, New Orleans coronavirus death was twice the rate of New York, with obesity listed as a factor. That statistic right there was specifically disheartening to me because New Orleans is significantly smaller than New York. We do not have the population that they do per square mile, and yet we have bypassed them in coronavirus deaths as connected to obesity. So obesity is even scarier than the coronavirus. It contributes to coronavirus, and it also has its own personal deafening effects. Next slide. Mr. David?
Okay, sorry guys. I'm trying to figure out this thing. All right.
Okay.
According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, February 2021, so very recent. We have this habit of living to eat, and there's a lot of obesity-related conditions, including heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and certain types of cancer that are some of the leading causes, but also preventable for premature deaths. So, you've gotten those recommendations for ladies of you've had children. Don't drink Pepsi, don't eat your raw foods, no sushi, things like that. I mean, things of that nature are typically for your own good, your own health, because the things you put inside your body are, of course, going to be given to your baby. Some of us who our parents can relate. The estimated annual medical cost of obesity in the United States is 147 billion in 2008, and that was well over a decade ago, and that's U.S. dollars. Right, the medical cost for people who have obesity was $1,429 higher than those of normal weight. So, in essence, we all are paying money to just get bigger. So, if you can extract the things out of your diet that you don't need, you also be saving money. Oh no. There it is. Okay. Now, according to the CDC, all right, we got a socioeconomic status. The men and women with college degrees have lower obesity prevalence compared with those of less education. All right. So if you can imagine, there's a young man or woman going to college. They're pretty much living off of noodles. We've many of us gone to school. We had to eat off the dollar menu. You're big spending if you're getting a combo meal. If you're out of school though, typically you're probably still at home, not home necessarily like with your mother and father. I mean, home like your hometown. So you already know where you can go get food. You could go by your friend's house and his mom's gonna be cooking red beans and rice, or you're gonna go down the street and your tacos are Taco Tuesday dollar menu. You can sack out like 10 of those, you'll be fine. And really just all your friends, you could just hang out with them and someone's mom's gonna feed you, at least down here. They're really nice. Now, men, white and Hispanic men, lower in the lowest and highest income groups compared with middle income groups. So when it comes to black males, prevalence was higher in the highest income group than the lowest income group. So essentially black men who are wealthier are probably in better shape. the Black men who are kind of poverty struck are typically obese. So if you come down to New Orleans, you're gonna see a lot of bigger people who are older but more comfortable in their ways. Because again, down here in New Orleans, we have Monday red beans and rice. We got our Taco Tuesdays. We got, I mean, food galore. You can pick and choose from. You can have typically on a 7-day week, you can have a different variety of food: Chinese, Vietnamese, Mexican, Italian, seafood, Cajun. I can't think of something else, but you get it. There's something to eat every single day, and then if you want to stick to those 3 meals, that's great. But a lot of us snack on the way, so we'll grab a pound of crawfish or crawdads. If you guys don't know what crawfish is, it's the red ones. They're like mini lobsters. Now, when it comes to women, white, Asian, and Hispanic women, the obesity prevalence was lower in the highest income group than in the middle and lowest income group. Now, when it comes to Black women, however, no difference in obesity prevalence by income. So it don't matter. Like Black women are, I mean, they're gonna find a way to get what they want, how they want. Now, the states with the lowest rates of adult obesity: Colorado. Why? Can anybody give me a guess? Let me pull up this chat right here. No one. Colorado.
Because they have a lot of activities.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly it. There's a lot of things to do up in those mountains. You can go hiking. You can go, what's it called? I'm doing the motion. Skiing. I'm sorry. You go skiing, snowboarding. There's a lot of activities. Go on the kayaking when it gets the summertime. It's a beautiful state. If you guys never been in Colorado, go check it out. Now, one of the best things about being down here is definitely the food in New Orleans. So if you guys never been to New Orleans, I would recommend New Orleans before going to Colorado. And there's multicultural traditions. And why do we eat so much? Because grandma's in the kitchen, and when she's cooking, you're gonna eat her food. Nobody turns down Big Mama's food. Nobody's gonna like, no, I'm good, I'm fine. No, you're gonna eat. You're getting too skinny. The holidays down here, I mean, there's really holidays everywhere. When you go to a nice function, whether it's an office function or family thing, someone's gonna bring the macaroni and cheese. Someone's got the green beans. Who's got the hams, the yams, the potatoes, the tomatoes, all that good stuff. Now there's social eating at these same parties. Hors d'oeuvres, you just pick and go. Oh, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna get a little taste of this. When you're dating, and for those of us that are still in the dating realm, one of the first things you do in a typical date is let's go out to eat. Whether it's coffee, let's go to lunch, let's have a nice romantic dinner. You're gonna socialize around eating, which typically you're gonna indulge yourself so that way you can just keep conversation and, oh, how's your cheesecake, or did you like the steak, whatever it may be. Social eating, again, business meetings. When you guys go out to lunch and you have a luncheon, just go over here to the local joint and just get something to eat and just chit chat about still work, but keep it professional. And then the peer pressure. It's all good, man. Have seconds. Yo, we got plenty more in the kitchen. There's a lot of times that I've been out myself where I find myself in a situation where I just ate something. I'm okay. But hey, you got to try my mom's good cooking. Oh, you got to try the shrimp pasta. Oh my God, you got to get this and try this, the gumbo, the potato salad. And I can't say no. And I told people in this class, I found out I was eating too much when I couldn't fit into my pants down here in New Orleans. I had to take it to the tailor. But I mean, with good reason. I had plenty of places to go eat, plenty of things to try. When I first came here to New Orleans, I had to have alligator. I had to do the crawfish, shrimp. I had to try the Gulf Coast seafood. And let me tell you, it is exactly how people describe it. Delightful, sensational, delicious. Does anybody else have any examples of, wherever else in the world you may be? Are people able to talk? No, huh? Okay. I'll do all
It's
the
okay. We can move forward.
time.
Next slide.
Okay.
So America pre-obesity. What was America like before the epidemic? Next slide. So if you look at some of these pictures are from magazines and just regular everyday people. You see they look a lot more fit. So if you look at the average American today, they look very different. Let's take a look why. Next slide. So some of the contributing factors to obesity that we're going to discuss here. The rise of processed foods, the growth of fast food restaurants, social political climate in the 70s and 80s, limited access to recreation, overeating, genetics, high diets and simple carbohydrates, disease and medication, psychological factors, and socioeconomic factors. All these things contributed to the obesity epidemic, and you will see why here shortly. Next slide.
Okay, the socio-political climate of the 70s and 80s. So for many of us who were not around, there's a lot of things that happened back then that are still affecting us today. You know, back in the 70s, throughout the 60s, 70s, there's been this warfare, you know, within our civil community. And there was Reaganomics that was going on for those of you that lived through the 80s, the Black Panther Party. Through my research and through things I've learned, you know, the Black Panther Party had this free breakfast program because they weren't, Black children were still, I mean, affected by the civil rights movement of the 60s. And there was a free breakfast program that the Black Panther really indulged themselves in and took over. They want to make sure that Black children were getting fed properly, that they were getting their innings. They're going to school with a nutritional breakfast. That way they didn't have to struggle through the day trying to learn and get this education that was pretty brand new to that time. If you can remember, if you can just think back, Ruby Bridges, the first Black female student from New Orleans, is still alive today. And she was the first girl in her schools back in 1967, I want to say it was. And I mean, people were typically, of course, not used to that and did not perceive it well. They didn't want children getting the same education as their white children or being in the same schools. It was a very hateful time back in those days. Now, so the Black Panther Party introduced this free breakfast program. You know, you had government officials seen it as a political climate that was just, they were taking on themselves, and they were strategizing to move against the government according to the government. That's the way they perceived it. In reality, it's just people taking care of their own. Now, come the 80s and 90s, when these Black Panther parties are broken up, people are going to prison for just standing up for basic human rights. We got broken homes in the 80s. You had the crack epidemic. You know, single motherhood was on the rise. We were given government cheese, government foods, cereal. Of you guys, if any of you grew up on WIC, you know, the Women, Infant, and Children program. People who were given certain food stamps. You could only shop for this amount for this many ounces. That was all going on through the 80s and 90s, and a lot of us are products of this still to this day. And we also think back to the 60s and 70s where fast food was starting to become introduced into the world. You know, in the 50s, there was a gentleman by the name of Roy Kroc who discovered this franchise. It was a small location in California called McDonald's by the McDonald's brothers. Overtook it, developed a great idea that he could just buy the land and then build on top of it and introduce the fast food world to America. And all you had to do was
David,
drive up. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Um, Go through your slides. You're getting ahead of yourself.
Oh, yeah, I know. I love talking, guys.
I know.
No, man. That government cheese,
Gotta
I
keep
tell
it
you.
about
That
a
cheese
minute
goes
per
in
slide because you on it. You on it.
there. All right. Now, the socioeconomic factors. Again, poverty. So for people who were not given that wealth, they were receiving SNAP, which is food stamps, and the inability to afford healthy food. So when you still to this day, like I said, we still feel a lot of the economic pressure. You go to the store nowadays, a fresh batch of vegetables that you're gonna find at your produce department, $2 to $5, depending on what you're looking for. If you go to the canned food section, it's like 96 cents, 62 cents, depending on if you're getting that great value. Now, the higher price may be more healthy, but have been shown to lead to better weight and health. So you're spending more money to eat healthy, great. But you know, when you're already kind of poverty struck, you're counting pennies and you're like, okay, this can of corn will do, or this nutrition, this what you think is nutritional fruit will do for now. Reality, there's organic options. There's just the regular options you find in the produce section, or you could get the little health fruit cups. Now the unemployment factor. Some of us, have been struck with this COVID-19 and lost jobs, lost careers, and the income's just not there the way it used to be. So you're having to depend on food stamps, and now in return, you're counting those dollars, and this is what we're going to get by with for the rest of the month or these next 2 weeks, and forbid if it's the next couple days. And so there's that less access that you have to nutritional food, and you're gonna see a lot of people who can outweigh, do I want to get this healthy salad for $5, or I'm gonna opt out for the hot pocket that's only $1. You gotta weigh out your options a lot of the times when when you don't have the ability to. So, which leads me to the rise of processed foods. Oh man, I hate these stuff. So, what are processed foods? The transformation of agricultural products into food, or of one form of food into another. It includes many forms of processed foods, from grinding grain to making raw flour, to home cooking, to complex industrial methods used to make convenience foods. As you can see, these examples right here, you probably have them in your pantry right now, and that's on you. I say if you can eat it and work it out, you'll be fine. A trainer told me that one time, and I believed him. But I'd rather take the higher advantage knowing that I'm putting healthy food into my mouth. There's a documentary called "What the Health." It's on Netflix. If you guys have the time to check it out, really goes into detail about the things that are on what is considered processed foods. I know some of you think like, oh, I'm going to eat turkey and be healthy. That turkey could be processed food as well. If it's sitting in the deli section and it has like a 2-3 week shelf life, and it has a bunch of ingredients that you can't even pronounce, or too many words, too many letters inside a word, it's probably not good for you. I'll say that. The less ingredients are are on a label, the better for you. All right, the unprocessed foods in natural state. So you got your grains, your fruits, your nuts, eggs and seafood, and your milk. So a dairy in itself is processed as well, in case you didn't know. Now, if you get the great value milk or Borden or whatever the milk is from your region, that milk typically is made inside of an establishment that has a lot of cows and that's produce for. Some of that dairy will have pus, blood. It'll be things that you don't expect to be drinking inside your milk. And I recommend, just, if I'm Joe Schmo here, nobody, but look at where you're getting your milk from, and I promise you, if you dig deep enough, you're not gonna like it. So you have other alternative options. You have almond milk, oat milk, which I just discovered a month ago. I'm become a fan of. Check out your other healthy food options. And when it comes to bread, your grains, wheat, look into where they're making the food at and how fresh that bread is. Nothing's better. Nothing beats fresh bread. I'll tell you that. When the pandemic happened and a lot of my friends were experimenting, I tried some of that fresh bread and it was delightful. So if you can learn how to make some fresh bread, all you need is some flour. You'll be okay. The growth of fast food restaurants, as I was getting into. Now, so Roy Kroc, of course, branded McDonald's and took over. Subway is actually the biggest fast food chain in the world. If you can imagine the Subway, I've been to Japan. I've seen them in Asia. I've seen them in Russia. They are all over the damn place. There's chain restaurants that you'll just pass by on the road, and one after another. They're different owners. The same thing. You're gonna go to a Carl's Jr. or a Hardee's and pretty much get the same burger. Now, why go to these restaurants? We know that you can spend $20 in the fast food line for a family of 5. You can spend that $20 and get food for practically 3 days. You could get that $5 chicken. You could get some pasta. You'll be all right if you go shopping. But we find ourselves in this busy times nowadays. Matter of fact, here we are in this class. We on a schedule. We had to go get the kids. We got to keep up with soccer practice. We got to do homework. We have to get the kids in bed by 9 p.m. Got to do it all again. Wake up at 6 in the morning. So as we get in this routine, this schedule, we find ourselves, damn, we don't have time to go shopping, or we don't have the equipment to make groceries. So with these broken homes and single mothers, single fathers, people who are struggling, you find yourself going to the dollar menu, going to the fast food joint. It'll be quick. It's just pull up to Subway, they'll make our food in less than 10 minutes. All right, we out, and we got to keep on going. You got to make it to practice. And, you know, that's really the growth of the fast food chains is what led to our increased belt lines. And as you can see, I mean, nowadays, what are we, 2021, and there's restaurants pretty much in every corner in every other world. Back in the 60s, 70s, not so much. You know, we only saw Burger Kings in the 80s. We only saw the rise of pizza chains in the 90s. You know, delivery was a big thing. Like, we get in 30 minutes or less. If you guys remember the campaign from the Domino's back in the late 80s, early 90s. You know, there was a lot of things happening in that time in order to persuade you to order from those chains. Okay. Now, diet high in simple carbs. What are carbs? Anybody want to take that? You ready, Letitia?
Yes. So moving forward in carbohydrates, we just had a big class on carbohydrates and simple carbs. And a diet high in simple carbs is very, 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 very traumatic when it comes to the waistline. It breaks down in your body and is quickly used as energy. But if you're not active, it's going to quickly turn into fat. Okay, versus complex carbs that take a while to break down in your body. So it's found in natural foods as well as processed foods. Okay, so we don't want to overeat simple carbohydrates unless we're living an active life. But most of us, because of the way that society has gone, once again, from fast food, broken homes, working, and all of these different things that have contributed to a lot of capitalism in society versus, you know, along with the declining of the health and all of these different things, it has become very easy for us to overindulge in overprocessed foods, which are high in simple carbohydrates. Next slide. Overeating.
Oh,
And not only the amount that we, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. It's fine. We can talk about the all you can eat. That used to be a big trend with the buffets back in the day. The all you can eat. I think they dwindled it down now. It's not all you can eat no more. They really have people that monitor you and to watch how much you eat because they don't have the amount of inventory to keep cooking for you. Next slide. All right, so this is a chart that's showing the portion distortion. You know, if you look on the back of your products and you can see that you have a single serving, it's supposed to be this amount. But you know, certain restaurants don't do that, especially if you cook it for yourself. You don't fix yourself one serving. You fix what you can, what you want to eat. You know how you say your eyes are bigger than your stomach? You always want to make sure your plate is full when it's not supposed to be that way. There's a graph right here showing US versus Japan in our size when it comes down to the drinks and the food. Like we used to have the value, not the value size, what's the size, the extra size, the super size it. We used to supersize everything in the 90s, not anymore. But when I was stationed in Korea, that's one thing that I noticed in the McDonald's over there versus here. Their size portions are very smaller, and certain items on the menu are completely different from the one here. Like if they feel like the burger has too many patties, they might opt out for that item for like a shrimp burger or something like that. They try to put more healthy alternatives on their menu versus the US. We don't really necessarily care about that part. We care about just making sure the food tastes good for everybody to keep paying for it. Next slide. All right, limited access to recreation. Like David explained, in Colorado, you have so many activities, so many things to do. I know in Washington State, by being stationed there, also there's many things to do. You can climb Mount Rainier. You can go to, it's just a whole lot of parks there, a whole lot of lakes, everything that you can do there. I know there are some communities that don't have playgrounds in the community. I really feel like the city officials they don't necessarily care too much about certain communities to where they would so much care about their health, care about that they have access to other recreational stuff outside of school to keep them healthy. That's why we as community health workers need to go within our communities. We need to ask our communities, how do you feel about, the city officials not having parks in our community for our kids, stuff like that. And I take that on to the city officials myself, and I advocate for my community, let them know like, hey, we need recreational places in this area so we can fight obesity in our community. Next slide.
And we must also think about the fact that in 1985 is when the Nintendo came out. So you got the war on drugs, you got Nintendo coming out, you have broken homes, you have WIC, and you have the growth of fast food restaurants during this time. So all of this stuff is going on simultaneously. So all of these things are creating a big melting pot for childhood obesity leading into adulthood obesity.
All right, so according to the CDC, it shows that genes can directly cause obesity in specific disorders such as Bardet-Biedl syndrome and Prader-Willi syndrome. But you also have to know that your genes do not always predict your future health, your behavior, and pass down bad habits. I know that you can be born with type 2 diabetes, if I'm not mistaken. And that's just something that you can't get rid of. Now, some people do just let that be what they are born with, and they just go along with it. But there are some people that actually fight against that to try to combat it, to make sure they don't have to deal with it anymore. Just because you was born at a certain weight, or as your parents. Next slide, David. I think that's what I'm going into right now.
Big bone.
Yep. Next one. All right. So your parents would have you, or they would eat certain things while they're pregnant with you. You come out a certain way. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you have to do, because they do have certain medications that can stimulate the appetite. They have certain medications that can slow down your metabolism, that can retain water. And these medications are your birth control, medications for diabetes, like your water pills and stuff like that, and your antidepressants, medication for blood pressure. Next slide, David. All these medications, even though the doctor prescribed them to you, doesn't necessarily mean that they are healthy for you. That's why we try to practice a holistic approach towards things, try to find home remedies to try to get away from certain things, because like Latae said in her presentation, everybody is different. Everybody is different. Just because this one medication is prescribed for everybody doesn't mean that it's healthy for me. I may have something going on inside of me that may trigger it, and I have a bad side effect from it. You also have your psychological factors when it comes down to obesity. According to Weight Matters, these are the factors that plays a part in it. Avoidance of emotion, low self-worth, your poor image, self-criticism, negative core beliefs, binge eating. I know everybody's seen the whole Nutty Professor movie where he got depressed, that everybody was clowning him for being overweight. And before he went to go, how can I put it, on his mind to go work out, he sat down and had a big thing of ice cream and donuts and M&Ms, and he had poured the M&Ms in his mouth, turned it up, and he had a big scoop of ice cream, but he was watching a Gene Simmons video at the exact same time. It's like, it's a mental thing. I know I can lose weight. I know I'm obese, but I have to train my mind to actually physically get there to do it. Next slide. So you got the rise of health infirmities. So the health infirmities rise in America following the spread growth of fast food franchises, the popularity of processed foods in America, and other reasons listed in previous slides. There was a clear line of demarcation that demonstrated a direct correlation to the rise in illnesses in America, like we talked about, like single mother household. I have to work, I have to provide. So I have to be at work more than I'm at home for my kids. But my kids have to eat and I can't provide, so I can't cook something healthy for them. Got to stop on the McDonald's along the way. The popularity, like Ingrid said, the popularity of video games made it cool for kids to play within the safety of their homes without physical activity. How can I put this? Times are different. I grew up on it takes a village to raise a child. So that means everybody in my community, everybody in my area, we all knew each other. We all looked after one another. You know, we can go outside and play. We can go outside and ride our bikes. A little bit after the night, the street lights come on. We could do all that. These days, we can't do that so much more now. It's different times now. So now you got the kids inside the home more. They're playing the video games more. You know, they're on the computers. They got tablets. My 4-year-old has an iPad, guys. I'm sorry. But, you know, they have tablets and everything now. It's just like, if you're inside the house, you know, of course they're going to eat. So they're sitting there and they're eating. They're going to game versus coming from outside, playing, being active and eating. It's different. Next slide. Childhood obesity for children and adolescents from ages 2 to 19. The prevalence of obesity was 18.5%. That was about 13.7 million children and adolescents had obesity. The obesity prevalence was 13.9% among 2 to 5-year-olds, 18.4% among 6 to 11, and 20.6% among 12 to 19. Because, you know, at that time, they're high schoolers, you know, like they're junior high schoolers. They're not going outside to play no more. Ain't nobody riding bikes to meet up with their friends at the playground anymore to shoot hoop. No one is doing it anymore. They're inside on the phone with their girlfriend, their boyfriend. They chatting it up, you know, eating a Twizzler or something like that. But they're not as active anymore. So the obesity rate with them was higher than the rest. Childhood obesity is more common among certain populations. Hispanic is 25.8%, non-Hispanic Black children 22.05%, and had higher obesity prevalence than non-Hispanic white children, 14.1%. And then you have your Asian children, non-Hispanic had 11.0%. And they had a lower obesity prevalence than non-Hispanic Blacks and Hispanic children. Not to say anything wrong about my Hispanics and my Black people, but we love food. We love flavor. We cook a lot, and it's a part of our culture. It's just something that, you know, that we was real big on that. We was raised on that. We had to make meals from scraps, you know, growing up. A lot of our, you know, that's just something that we do. We're always eating. Next slide. Here's a list of how your quality of life can decline with obesity. It's a long list, and that you can see at the very last, even though this is a big list, there is very, very much more. This is not everything. You can have limited mobility. This is something that will cause you to physically and mentally, not only just that, but I'm getting into a more higher power, spiritually break you down. And I get it. It says be comfortable within your own skin. I get it. I understand that. Love yourself, love your body, but you need to love your health and your life a little bit more. They have your chronic condition. When you're obese, people don't want to walk around in the store. It's not even a don't want to walk around. They can't. And then they have it in their mind of being in someone else's way because they're in the way and they're moving too slow because they're overweight. So what do? They get in the carts at Walmart and they drive around for their groceries. I know for sure, and I experienced it firsthand, being on an airplane ride where someone was obese and they had to have the seat next to them vacant, but they also had to have an extra seat belt given to them so it can be connected to the one that's already there to pull over them. Disneyland won't even allow you to ride certain rides, not just because of your height, but because of your weight. Elevators, of course, everybody know, I think the capacity is 2,000 pounds. If I'm not, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how many, I think it's about 2,000 pounds on the elevator. But people that have the phobia, or how can I say this? That they're scared of obese people. You know, it's like I said, it plays a mental part on you. You're standing on the elevator, you're obese, and someone walks up and they're trying to get on the elevator ride with you. They're not going to get on that elevator with you, even though they know you are not close to 2,000 pounds. And they know if they get on that elevator and they're not 2,000 pounds, it's just the fear of that elevator is going to stop because you're so big. And I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but that's just how it is. People are cruel, and children don't lie, and they don't have no tech nor coup. They will let you know. They will walk up to you and tell you that you are bigger than whatever object that they feel like is big, an elephant. And that will really play a major part on you. Not to get off, I'm not getting off topic, but the rapper Kevin Gates said that one of his main reasons why he lost weight was because he was holding his godchild. But he had his shirt off, and his godchild was trying to go towards his chest because it was feeding. It was trying to go towards his chest like he was the female to have breasts. And he said at that moment, he's like, yeah, I can't do this. I gotta lose weight. I need to lose weight now. All right. So here's the effects and influence of social marketing on mental and physical wellness. Miss Ingrid Jones, can you take it away? Ingrid?
Yeah.
Oh.
So in summarizing with the limited time that we have left, the next few slides we're going to be talking about social media and the influence on the marketing, how marketing and commercials and movies and television and things of that nature and magazines. So in summation, the entire presentation is about society, not only politically, what the government did as far as medicine and medication and keeping people sick for commercial purposes, as well as the war on drugs and the growth of fast food restaurants, taking more natural foods out of our stores and putting more processed foods in the stores. There's even labels where they'll say it's natural, but it's really not. And the attacks on the minds of the youth and even adult men and women, where you feel like your body is not enough. Like in the 90s, you had the reality shows and you had the Kardashians and the growth of plastic surgery. So people are, as a whole in society, are being told that you're not worthy, you're not perfect, and that contributes to stress and weight loss, and weight gain as well. You get anorexia, you get bulimia, you have people bullying kids for their weight and because of the way that they look. So society as a whole has cultivated a obesity gumbo, if you will. And when we're looking at obesity, the goal of our presentation on today is to look at it from an esoteric perspective, a metaphysical perspective, versus just looking at an individual and saying you're overweight, you need to work out. You need to understand that there are many, many factors that contribute to this true epidemic. And an epidemic is not an individual epidemic. It is an epidemic that we all should feel collectively a responsibility, just as if there's any other cause such as PETA, people who are advocating for dogs and different animals and different things. Obesity is one of those things that we as a society have to take accountability for and understand the many different ways that contribute to why people overeat, don't love themselves, don't have the economic resources, don't have access to work out, or different things of that nature. And so if we consider all of these different things as we quickly go through the slides to get to the end, that have our society in such a sickly place when it comes to weight, obesity, self-image, self-esteem, self-worth. And we also discuss in the slide, in future slides, things that can support the mental, the physical, and the economics of individuals who would seek and desire to improve their weight in America. Okay, so with that, I want to thank everyone. I'm not going to open up the floor because I know we're pressed for time and respect for the next presenters, but that is the overall take
No,
of
definitely open it up. Open up the floor. We have a few minutes.
Okay. So opening up the floor, does anyone have any takes or when you think about society and starting from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s, you got the war on drugs, you got Reaganomics, you have broken homes, you got broken families, you got the Nintendo coming in, starting the time when you have child obesity coming in. So you got Nintendo, kids are being inside, they're taking away recreation. They're eating fast food restaurants, they're not working out as much, kids are not safe to be out on the streets. So you have all of these things culminating. You have, society, telling you what you're supposed to look like. So you have anybody have any takes on, their experiences coming up or what you might have seen, and your perspective on its effects on the obesity epidemic in America?
You guys are gonna have to open the questions. I can't get on the screen.
Oh, it's okay. I just asked the question. It doesn't have to be on that screen. The presentation is essentially over, but we're just opening up the floor now for anyone in the class who may have anything to contribute to the discussion or any questions.
Yeah, again, obesity, I mean, is not only a physical, something physical that happens to you, but I mean, mentally, it's gonna really mess with you, and it's gonna also have an effect on, the people in your household, your kids, your family members, friends. If you feel like you're eating too much and people make fun of you, like you're gonna you're gonna feel some type of way, and the people in your household are gonna have that. They're gonna feel that. It's not a normal thing to have your parents upset, mad, emotionally eating, when they're depressed and they just get that big old barrel of ice cream, just go ham. Yeah, mental health is also a big factor that deals with obesity. And, if you don't feel like you're healthy in your mind and you're not, and you're not doing nothing about it, you're just going to sit there and, just become a vegetable, and not the good one.
Exactly, David. It's 90% mental, guys. 90% mental. 90% mental. Keep that in mind. And at the end of the day, you always have to remember what's more important. What's more important? This meal, this great, marvelous, big bowl of gumbo with a grilled cheese sandwich on the side with some potato salad on the inside, or living longer for the family, making sure you're around for your loved ones. What's more important?
And
you can eat, no one say that you have to eat rice cakes and drink water and all that stuff like that. Eat in moderation.
Yeah.
Eat what you love, but eat it in moderation. That's the biggest thing. Always remember moderation. But that's just not with food. That's with everything that you do in life. No, you never want to overconsume. You just want to just have just enough just to keep it going.
I think you guys have covered it and have done an excellent job. Well done. I'm very, very impressed. So if you don't get any more response, that means that you've done an excellent job in covering it.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Betty.
you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And now, just as Dr. Betty said, we really appreciate the way that we covered the history and cultural obesity influence in America. And now we will move on to Team 3's presentation. And if you're just joining us, I am Adrienne Crowell. I am your host. And thank you for joining the Community Health Worker webinar. Now, Team 3 is going to take us into food disparities and insecurities. And we're just pleased to have them introduce themselves and begin. Team 3, take us out.
Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying on to continue the conversation with us for our community health worker presentation. And if you bear with me one moment, I will bring up our webinar presentation. Oh, this go away. Okay. All righty. So again, good afternoon, and my name is Melanice Alexander, and I am a community health worker. Our presentation for today is Navigating the Urban Food Desert, a conversation about food insecurities in our community presented by my team, which is the Grassroots Food Coalition, or also known as the Community Health Worker Team 3. So just to briefly introduce, again, myself, Melanice Alexander, community health worker, and my team, Jackie Miller and Jacqueline Bennett. Today, we will discuss the community health workers bridging the gap, the problem, what is food insecurity, the impact, hunger across the DMV, the solution, community call to action, and we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. And please feel free to add your questions in the Q&A box throughout the presentation, because we definitely want to hear from you. What is a community health worker? A community health worker, you may be wondering, I know most of our guests here are instructors, our mentors, our community partners, but some of our guests are our friends, families, and neighbors that may not be familiar with what exactly a community health worker is and what does that have to do with food insecurities, the food desert, and just health disparities in general. A community health worker is a frontline public health worker who is a trusted member or has an unusually close understanding of the community served. Community health workers became an official healthcare professional as a result of the Affordable Health Care Act of 2010. Community health workers are known by many different names, as you see here depicted on the graphic. You may have heard them called navigator, advisor, coordinator, or some other titles. What do community health workers do? Community health workers has played a vital role in educating, advocating, and promoting positive health outcomes, in addition to connecting the community to resources, care, and services. Community health workers provide their communities with information about health issues that affect them, link individuals with the health and social services that they need to achieve wellness, and they also respect confidentiality, privacy, rights, dignity, worth, and trust of the individuals, families, and communities that we serve. But our number one job as a community health worker is our primary goal, is a role, goal, and responsibility of the community worker is to bridge the gap within our community. Bridging the gap, understanding the vulnerabilities in our community and identifying what they are, who they impact, and how we can solve the problem. That's really what it's all about. In today's topic, one of the many health disparities that plague not just our local area, but all across America and even the world is food insecurity. As community health workers, we need to have a plan of action. So our plan of action as we attack this particular topic is to research the root cause and educate ourselves on where food insecurity happens, to employ assessments or other sensitive screenings to find out who is truly experiencing food insecurities and how can we connect them with proper food sources. Engage in our community with outreach activities and discussions with local government agencies and organizations, utilizing local media and social media to promote food resources. As always, community health workers are advocates for the community, advocating for quality food sources and availability of these quality food sources in all of our communities. Educating the community on how to navigate food resources, networks, and systems, whether that's helping an individual with signing up for SNAP, connecting them with a food pantry, or any other community system that may be available. And most of all, encouraging healthy eating and exercise habits. So I hope that with all of that said, that you will join in our conversation as my colleagues dig deeper into the conversation of what is a food insecurity, what is a food desert, and what can we do as a community to solve that. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Jackie Miller.
Thank you for joining us and waiting patiently. I just want to go through some definitions for us. Hunger is a severe lack of food according to the Webster's Dictionary. Food desert is an urban or rural area where the availability or affordable, healthy, fresh food is limited, as described by Rachel Carson, council.org. A food insecurity states it's the state of being without reliable access to sufficient quality of affordable or nutritious food. So food security described by the nutritive is what is food security? Food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. Maryland Food Bank states that word hunger is outdated. Next slide, please. So what we're addressing is there are levels of why people don't have the type of food that they need. They may have food, but it might not be the correct food for proper nutrition for their family and or children. So we have mild food insecurities where worrying about the ability to obtain food. So people will make the choice of buying food versus paying a bill, especially if they have young children. And then oftentimes also, they may have the money to buy the food, but they may not have money to buy the proper foods. So they may load up on carbohydrates to keep everybody from being hungry. So in the moderate food insecurity, we have compromising quality and variety of food, which I just described, and also reducing quantities and skipping meals. I'm aware of some parents who cannot afford food would allow the children to eat and they go to bed hungry. And then severe food insecurity, experiencing hunger where people do not have food and it relates to the money. And so food, the lack of food or not having enough food or not proper foods is a part of the social determinants of health, which can affect a person's health as one of the outcomes. Next slide, please. What is a food desert? There are no grocery stores, no farmers markets, surrounded by fast food, junk food, or food high in burgers and fats. So if you think about it, if you're aware of some of the neighborhoods that are near you or even the neighborhood that you live in, you may find fast food places like McDonald's, Wendy's, and some other places, but you don't find a place that will sell fresh fruits and vegetables. Now, historically, people would, I'm sorry, excuse me, let me back up a minute. One of the effects of this is diabetes, not having proper food, and also hypertension in people of color and other minorities. So diabetes, there are two types. One, a person is born with it. They do not produce insulin. And most of the time it shows up about age 3. And they have to take insulin. But type 2 is usually associated with weight gain. Traditionally, middle-aged people acquire type 2 diabetes. Now we have children age 10 with type 2 diabetes, and it's associated with weight gain. So you have parents and sometimes single parents go to McDonald's in the morning to feed the children, and there's 3,000 calories in a breakfast. And so we have children who have type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. Here we have a upside down pyramid. At the bottom is a very low food insecurity, where people all times during the year, eating patterns of one or more household members were disrupted and food intake reduced because the household lacked money, other resources for food. And use this money. There are organizations who can help, but there are some factors that affect that also. We have the low food insecurity, with households reduce the quality, variety, and desirability of their diets, but the quality of food intake and, normal eating patterns were not substantially disrupted. Now, mind you, I'm aware of historically people who may have a large family, they don't make a lot of money, and so they buy foods that will keep the kids from getting hungry, as I stated earlier. So those things might be rice, they may be high, the diet might be high in rice, high in potatoes or bread. These are carbs, and those things help the kids and our family members from being hungry. But later on, it can cause a weight problem. And so it can also be a factor in people acquiring type 2 diabetes. So there's a marginal food security. Households had problems or anxiety at times about, ascending adequate food, acquiring adequate food, but the quality, variety, and quality of their foods were not substantially reduced. Okay, so as we, that was one more, thank you. The high one of essentially there is no problems. Okay, next slide, please. Why should we care? As I mentioned earlier, the social determinants here affect different people groups with disparities. And what we want to do is help decrease that disparity and close the gap that was mentioned earlier. These disparities can and do affect a person or community's health outcomes, as I stated earlier, type 2 diabetes, or even hypertension or high blood pressure, because you'll find that these people groups use a lot of fat and a lot of salt, which affect both of these disease processes. It is a part of the 80% of the issues that affect healthcare, food. So community healthcare workers are advocates for problems that plague communities and or people groups. This is one of the areas to address in the community to improve health outcomes and decrease the disparities amongst this people group. Next slide. Hunger in America. First, let me say, America is a wealthy country, and you may not think that we have hunger in America, but we do. America is a wealthy country. Hunger and poverty reports 37,227,000 people in lack discussed by feeding in America. That was shocking to me. The lack of food causes families to choose between food and other bills they continue to pay, as I said earlier, because you're gonna feed your kids. Really, you're gonna feed your kids. So something else may be lacking. Next slide, please. We was concerned how coronavirus affected hunger, and it has. Feeding America projects 50 million people plus potentially 17 million children will go hungry because of coronavirus. In 2018, food insecurity affected 14.3 billion people. Many are not qualified to receive federal nutrition programs. They instead are supported by local food banks. So as you can see, these things may change, but it's what we used to call the working poor. Next slide. And we went a little further because I live in Maryland. There are Maryland food banks in America, and it states that 1 in 8 are food insecure at any given time in America. The article points out obesity is not a symptom of food security, but food insecurity. Again, people eating the wrong foods and they can gain weight. So all food insecurity people are not homeless either. Homeless people account for 15%. 39% of Marylanders experience food insecurity, and that is a large percentage. These make too much money for assistance. Again, I mentioned the working poor. 42% of supplemental nutrition programs like SNAP recipients were working. Next slide. I broke it down even further to Prince George's County, and to my surprise, I found about 10 areas in Prince George's County that had food deserts. Remember that the food desert is a place they don't have access to quality food or what they need, or they don't have the money to buy it. And so these areas were surprising to me because Prince George's County is listed in the United States of America between one of the wealthiest countries for people of color. So I'm like, how did this happen here? So the United States Drug Administration has identified areas that are considered food deserts reported by a patch organization. Remember, the food desert is the absence of stores that sell healthy food. So you might have a store in the neighborhood that sells a lot of junk food, but you can't find fruits and vegetables or a fruit stand or vegetable stand. Next slide, please. And so here's some solutions for Prince George's County and also in the state of Maryland. We found some things that would work in any state, actually. Create a path for food for security. An integrated approach will community centers to help identify not just health issues, but also the areas that require assistance. Food is one of them. The social determinants of health, as I mentioned earlier, and finances is another. Surveys can be taken to address the issues. I found a survey called Prepare, used by the National Association of Community Health Centers. They have tools. It asks simple questions, and you can find out information in different areas. So it gives you a starting point of where to start to address these food desert areas. And we have to be culturally sensitive because everybody's not the same, and they don't eat the same foods. Short term, we have some nearby food banks. We found a lot of food banks that are distributing or giving food, especially during the time of the COVID era. We established a grassroots coalition partnering with the District of Columbia. Education from the surveys, reach out to potential partners such as doctor's office, clinics, community clinics, community centers, and identify priorities and glean from other models. Excellent. Here we're going to show you a video that that you can see what others have done. And this is one solution that we can glean from to establish some food banks or other areas in Maryland, not just Maryland, to take care of the issue.
DC Greens is a nonprofit organization that works to advance food justice and health equity in the nation's capital. Washington, D.C. is not only our nation's capital, but it is also one of the top 5 wealthiest metro regions in the whole country. Regretfully, this wealth has not protected many of our city's residents. Ward 8 in Washington, D.C. is the highest poverty area of the city, and residents of this neighborhood experience disproportionate poor health outcomes, which is why we have partnered with health clinics, a grocery store, and DC Health to offer a produce prescription program called Produce RX. Through this program, medical professionals are able to prescribe fruits and vegetables to low-income patients experiencing diet-related chronic illnesses, including hypertension and diabetes. This allows doctors to give their patients the tools to help them follow their advice to improve their health. While working with our partners to modify the Produce RX program in response to this public health crisis, one of our partners raised concerns around how issues of food insecurity are exacerbated when patients are told they need to quarantine due to COVID-19.
We started working with DC Greens last year through the Produce RX program, and they've established strong and rich partnerships with clinics throughout the city to actually move the needle on food justice. Back in March, leadership at Whitman Walker made the decision to swiftly shift most medical services to telemedicine, and our only in-person services were at our respiratory COVID testing clinics. People would come in for a COVID test, and then we'd often instruct them to go straight home and not resurface for 10 plus days. Food insecurity is an issue for a lot of DC residents. And we know some people want to hit up the grocery store one more time to get some essentials. So anything we can do to...
I'm sorry, are you able to see the video?
No.
Okay, give me one moment.
DC Greens is a nonprofit organization that works to advance food justice and health equity in the nation's capital. Washington, D.C. is not only our nation's capital, but it is also one of the top 5 wealthiest metro regions in the whole country. Regretfully, this wealth has not protected many of our city's residents. Ward 8 in Washington, D.C. is the highest poverty area of the city, and residents of this neighborhood experience disproportionate poor health outcomes, which is why we have partnered with health clinics, a grocery store, and DC Health to offer a produce prescription program called Produce RX. Through this program, medical professionals are able to prescribe fruits and vegetables to low-income patients experiencing diet-related chronic illnesses, including hypertension and diabetes. This allows doctors to give their patients the tools to help them follow their advice to improve their health. While working with our partners to modify the Produce RX program in response to this public health crisis, one of our partners raised concerns around how issues of food insecurity are exacerbated when patients are told they need to quarantine due to COVID-19.
We started working with DC Greens last year through the Produce RX program, and they've established strong and rich partnerships with clinics throughout the city to actually move the needle on food justice. Back in March, leadership at Whitman Walker made the decision to swiftly shift most medical services to telemedicine, and our only in-person services were at our respiratory COVID testing clinics. People would come in for a COVID test, and then we'd often instruct them to go straight home and not resurface for 10 plus days. Food insecurity is an issue for a lot of DC residents, and we know some people want to hit up the grocery store one more time to get some essentials. So anything we can do to help facilitate a safer and more immediate quarantine promotes public health. Andrea from DC Greens asked what we were seeing and how they could help. It was one of the cooler public health moments I've experienced. We've been able to help keep families safe by reducing the need to be out in the community, helping to keep sick people from working if they're concerned about earning money to put food on their table so they can focus on their recovery. 2 weeks of food delivered to their door, delicious and healthy produce, and catered frozen meals, enough for 2 people, is truly wonderful. Food is absolutely medicine.
When we heard the clinic's concerns around COVID-19 and food insecurity, we reached out to DC Health to see if they would be interested in partnering with us to design a pilot program to address this problem. We had strong relationships with our clinics and DC Health, but we knew we needed more partners. We needed partners to provide food delivery to people's homes, and also partners to supply and assemble food boxes containing frozen meals, produce, and other food staples. We were able to bring VIA, a transportation company, and Occasions, a catering company, to help us with this project and be able to serve our community during this challenging time. The end result is a program through which clinic partners connect patients who are food insecure and who are asked to self-quarantine due to COVID-19 to a program that provides a 2-week supply of food to help them keep their quarantine. The program workflow is very easy. Clinic partners screen patients for COVID-19 and food insecurity and provide a unique code and instructions to patients on how to request a box of food. Patients then place an order by calling the call center, which is managed by our delivery partner VIA. And then VIA communicates with DC Greens and Occasions, our catering partner, to place the order of food boxes. Once the boxes are ready, VIA drivers pick up the boxes at Occasions and then deliver to our participants' homes.
During the COVID-19 public health emergency, remaining connected to your clinical provider, as well as ensuring food access, have been major priorities for DC Health. The COVID-19 public health emergency has highlighted 2 key takeaways. Number 1, this moment is exposing gaps in our food and healthcare systems, and more importantly, presents a pivotal opportunity to develop, implement, and evaluate innovative cross-sector solutions that invest in food as medicine as a preventive healthcare measure. Second key takeaway is that these cross-sector solutions that integrate healthcare and food access systems will require cross-sector partnerships. Building clinical community linkages to close the chasm between clinical medicine and public health is a major priority for DC Health. These linkages connect clinical providers, community organizations, and public health agencies, and aim to improve patients' access to preventive and chronic care services. The success of this COVID-19 pilot has been supported by a strong existing partnership between DC Health and DC Greens. During this COVID-19 pilot, DC Health has offered strategic planning, guidance, and public health expertise to DC Greens.
VIA has been a part of the DC community since 2016. And when DC Greens approached our team after identifying food access challenges for students and patients under quarantine, we were able to work together to quickly launch a digital food delivery platform to serve those in need. Since March, we've been using our technology, known by many in the DC area for on-demand shared rides, to instead efficiently plan and route deliveries of groceries and produce boxes to the patients of Whitman Walker Clinic and students at Washington Jesuit Academy. We work with drivers from a ride-sharing service in the area to meet the high demand for contactless at-home deliveries. And we're glad to bring our driver partners back to work while helping DC Greens efficiently and safely serve more residents at scale.
We believe that the success of this program is mainly due to the strong partnerships and also by having a champion at each partner organization that connects and maintains communication between all partners. COVID-19 is exposing gaps in our food and healthcare systems and illustrates the need for innovative cross-sector solutions and investments in food as medicine as a preventative healthcare measure. We believe it is extremely valuable to share best practices and learn from each other, and we hope this food quarantine pilot is something that can be replicated in other communities.
Thank you very much. We decided that this was a great example of what we can glean from for a solution to decrease the disparities in community groups. One of the things that was impressive to me was the people they partnered with, and also they included different cultures, so that one person is a person or cultural group is not left out, and it could be effective. Up next is my partner, which is Jacqueline Bennett. She will talk about the community and call to action. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for sticking with us with this great information that we have. We're going to continue because there is a conversation in reference to the problem. And the problem we're talking about are food insecurities, food deserts. And because there is a problem, and we've done a lot of information, we've done a lot of information gathering. We have actually talked to stakeholders. We have talked with people from FRAC. We have talked with DC Health, and we want to present active, informative, up-to-date information to you. When we talk about this particular problem, I picked this particular magazine to bring forth this article about a local food activist point of view of the problem. A lot of people have a lot of solutions. A lot of people are talking. A lot of people are discussing this. But I picked this particular lady who was a person who actually had patients in Washington, D.C. and served people of color. And then she has a conversation that the problem is more of a systemic racism which permeates our national food system. She talks about a lot of her clients that they had obesity, and that she argued that the proximity of well-stocked grocery stores are not enough of a solution given this country's elaborate food problems. Next slide, please. So when this particular conversation comes forth, she's saying food desert is called an outsider term. And the reason why she says that is she says that the desert place is like a desolate place. rather than places with enormous potential to mine. Karen Washington states that it's more of a food apartheid. And she's saying that because there are a lot of types of innate discrimination, and there are a lot of situations that stem with systemic racism. And she mentions the Black Farmers and Agriculturers Association, how Black farmers have been fighting since 2004 to be able to get grants and money to be able to provide food for DC and other DMV areas. Next slide, please. So when we talk about food desert and insecurity, food deserts can be in cities or in rural areas, and it's often implemented in an equitable way. And there are other people who are tapping into a conversation about food deserts and insecurity and the problems that it could be with systemic racism. And they're not all people of color who are in this particular conversation. There are many people in the conversation that are holding offices in the political systems in Washington, D.C. And listening to one of the most recent national anti-hunger policy conferences in March, I was listening to the USDA Secretary, Tom Vilsack, and he was saying, even though we have food banks need systems to be able to store perishables so that the food can be delivered to the clients. And he made a very important statement that I noted. He said, if we use $160 billion to treat diabetes and health costs are around over 180 million, that we could save money by cutting health costs, by be able to provide food for the people, to be able to provide assistance for the people. And it was really important, this whole conference, it was a lot of leaders that came from different states that were talking about food insecurities. When we talk about Karen Washington, she mentions that there was a class action suit against farmers, even though we have some feed in and participation with the USDA, farmers have not been able to, at that time, make impact to get their finances and monies dumped in so that they can provide the service. Next slide, please. So what is the impact? The impact is something that goes underlying what we may look at on the internet in various places, because there are people who are impacted by food insecurities that we are not even aware of. For example, in Ward 2, and that's where I am living now, and also helping other seniors here in Ward 2, there are at least 546 people who live in Ward 2 who are food insecure. And I studied this thing because there are many supermarkets, there's Whole Foods, there's Trader Joe's, there's all kinds of food stores here, but there is some people that slip under the gap that we don't even know that have food insecurities. And seniors definitely we're focusing on, because they do not have enough money to buy their food because of a high rent and low amount of money, medical expenses, and various types of things. So when I have been helping a lot of the seniors here, we find that a lot of the impact has been pretty strong here, because we have a lot of people who are of different cultures, and we don't want it to be a barrier to cultural understanding for them, because even though these wonderful markets are around, they go to other Caribbean markets, they go to Red Apple, they go to other places to get the food that they're accustomed to eating. Next slide, please. So this was a graph that I had according to the population in Ward 2 to show the other minorities that are in this particular area. And as I said, 696 families, that's 5.8% of the families are in Ward 2 are families that are below poverty. And I said, well, you know, the average income is $113,000 that people are making in other races within this organization, within this particular population group. Next slide, please. So we talk about DC Hunger. DC Hunger recommends that we continue to keep this platform together, that we continue to find solutions to the problem. Next slide. So the people say, well, okay, what's happening? What is the government doing about this? The government is doing a lot about this, but we just have to find a way to do more. In March 26, 2020, the Senate and the White House compromised on a $2 trillion emergency package, which includes key investments that address some important COVID-19 challenges that workers and healthcare providers, state, local, and tribal governments face. But more action is needed to help struggling households to have food. This situation with food insecurities is not just because of COVID-19. It has gone before in the 1990s with food insecurities in certain communities, especially east of the Anacostia. Next slide, please. So when we talk about cultural competencies, we talk about cultural competence is a process of lifelong learning. It results in knowledge, skills, behavior, and attitudes that allow us to work effectively with others from different cultural backgrounds and increase the ability of organizations to maximize the benefits of diversity within their workplaces. And when we talk about cultural understanding, we have other organizations that are documenting this information, that there is a combination of systems, institutions, and factors that advantage white people and people of color and cause widespread harm and disadvantage in access and opportunity. There exists in the institutions and policies that advantage other people, and it does not advantage people of color. So we have done interviews with people to find out, where do you go for your food? If you're Trinidadian, if you're Guyanese, or where are you going, and what are your challenges that you're having with accessing food? So when we talk about one of the core competencies that I'm responsible for is the cultural competence. And cultural mediation is the process of building bridges between cultural and social realms and the building of new relationships between the political, cultural, and public spheres. Next slide, please. So when we've done this research, we have done community coordination by trying to find out where people are, what their needs are, what their problems are, whether it be transportation, access, money, not enough food, or just where the problems are. Because we as community health workers are supposed to address the social determinants of health and interconnected with food insecurity. We have to provide patients with supportive services, such as patient navigators, and we have to conduct food insecurity screenings to identify hunger as a health need. Next slide, please. Thank you. And in this process, we must do local resources and system navigation. There are many ways that resources can be found. Aunt Bertha's network connects people seeking help and verified social care providers that serve them. The hungerandhealth.org is a organization or resource that you can tap in and find out information. You have DC Central's Kitchen, who has been a wonderful tool to strengthen people's community with food. And you can also call your local number 211 or 311 to link resources by telephone if you're a senior and you do not have internet or Wi-Fi services. Next slide, please. This is one of the resources of helping individuals and clients link you UDMV.com. You can go in with your zip code. You can go in and find out any resource, any food resource, anything within this particular location, which is started from Aunt Bertha. Aunt Bertha started the organization, and Link U is under Aunt Bertha. Next slide, please. So there are people within the community that are transitioning and transforming as leaderships to do something about this problem. One of the people that I was really reading about is Mr. Christopher. He has an organization that he started several years ago called Dreaming Out Loud. And with his organization, he wanted to provide greater access to healthy food, equitable food systems. And he was also given an award in January 2021 from Georgetown University. He was honored by the Georgetown University College at the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration that was just recently done this particular year. In 2008, Mr. Bradshaw, he founded the Dreaming Out Loud as a response to food, education, and socioeconomic disparities that are facing communities. So they're actually out there doing this. They're actually in the dirt. They're actually connecting with the community. Next slide, please.
Would you like to show the video, Ms. Bennett?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Growing healthy food is important. When people grow food, they come together. There's healing in the soil. There's stories to be told when people gather, and the old and the young are in the same space accomplishing something together. But there's also opportunities in food to create jobs where folks will have an equal chance to control their own destiny.
I got into gardening out of the need to save money so that I can feed my children fresh produce. My stepmother, who had a little garden in her backyard, I tasted her cucumbers and her tomatoes, and it was it from there. For me, it was a lot more empowering because I wanted that control back that the big box stores have over what foods we have. I grew this. I know where it comes from. I know what's on it. I know where my seeds came from. And I put my love and my heart and soul in it.
6th Street Garden is a garden that was bare when we first got it. Wasn't nothing there but grass. We got dirt and raised beds, and from there we just started planting here. So it's a community garden, actually.
When Bo got the garden, said we're gonna plant a garden, Miss Mary, I said, now you're talking my language. I'm a country girl, so you know, we always grow everything that we eat, so everybody in our community could have some food even when they didn't have any.
Our garden is like a hub for people, and then the truck is here, right? So that draws them in.
And you know, the ice cream truck kind of like a magnet. So that's definitely kids like sucks them all up, but everybody stayed engaged into weeding, or we had cherry trees up there, peach trees, like picking fruit off the trees or watering. They were like locked in.
The kids took a lot of pride coming in that garden. When they get out of school, they come running and see, what did you do next in the garden? Our kids and elders, we don't eat healthy like we should. And the price of food has gone up so far, and it'd be better if we could eat from the garden, and then you'll know what you're eating, where it's coming from.
Early in the morning, you know, when I get up and I come to the back door so I can see the garden, I say, oh, thank you. We got something to eat, and it's growing nicely.
In order for everybody to stay together and be strong, we have to work together. Just kind of like the forest, right? Trees do this, the grass does this, worms do this, microorganisms do this. Everybody plays their part, but everybody's working together.
It's just a chance for different people in this community and other communities to come here and grow some food.
So that was just an idea of some of the farmers and some of the community supported agriculture that is around. And talking about community supported agriculture, next slide. So talking about dreaming out loud, because of my background, as my family's a farming background, that's why I was very interested in knowing that even the Dreaming Out Loud program, there are actually programs that there have started already in some of the recreation centers, such as Kelly Miller Center, and there are the Department of Public Works that are also tapping into areas where they are setting up places where there'll be food available. And we have checked to find out that they are getting ready to implement this thing within the next 30 to 60 days. Because of farming, most of the food from the spring and the summer, now is the time when fruits and vegetables are plenteous. So that is going to be offered very, very soon. And you can also do that particular research under community supported agriculture online. And Roots for Life is a grassroots volunteer organization that was founded in 2017. We don't have a video for this, but there are women, the women that have started this program have actually prepared food, have actually found people who need the food, and was able to educate people about what this food is and how to cook this food. And that's really what we need to do. We need to show people, if you have a little bit of chicken, cut up the chicken. If you have a little bit of food, find ways. We show people how to find ways how to cook, find ways how to keep their food, and find ways how to make food taste much better with different herbs and whatever. It just, you know, when you start combining some other things, you can show people how you can eat the same thing, but you're not eating. You can be Italian one day, you can be Oriental another day. So with Roots for Life, that's why I like that particular organization, because with the two ladies, that they were friends and they started this particular Roots for Life up, and hopefully and prayerfully they'll be able to start it up and running once the summer begins as well. Thank you. And the next slide. So we talked about farmers, which are providing this information, which are providing the resources. Farmers are actually starting to come forth with providing this. They're able to take information over the internet, and they're able to deliver food to clients who have the ability to go on the internet. And for those who want to pick up food, they're able to get information for people who have the resources to come and pick it up. And in farming, we show people how you can start a little box in your home, start cooking, fixing some little herb boxes and doing some things so you can make your food taste better. Their mobile markets are coming. Things are really sprouting up, starting in May and June. So we've tracked them to find out if they're ready for you guys. Next slide, and I believe that's the end. Any questions? We're looking to see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions. Any questions?
Well, that just means you did an amazing job, Team 3. Woohoo! Hold on just one moment. I'm sharing my screen now, and my goodness. Alrighty here. We learned so much from your presentation on food disparities and food insecurities. I mean, there is a difference. I will have to go back and revisit the slide to really understand the nuances, but now I know that there's a difference, and I will take away the food apartheid. Thank you so very much, everybody, for doing an amazing job. And so, in the essence of time, we're going to invite our audience if they have any questions, if they want to put them in the chat, if they want to rate the webinar, that would be appreciated as well. This was an awesome presentation, as were all of them. And now, you know, I can fully be prepared to help my community and myself. And because of the information that was presented today, I hope that you too are now able to better help yourself and your community when it comes down to opioids, the good, the bad, and the ugly, obesity and its cultural influences. I know it's a major part of my culture, and food disparities and insecurities. Even though we have lots of food opportunities in our community, they may not be altogether healthy. So we have to, I'm just so glad that we know to take a look at that. So without further ado, I would like to just acknowledge the many people that poured into this awesome presentation. And we want to begin, of course, with Dr. Betty Muakil, the president of Access to Holistic and Productive Living, her assistant, Mr. Rashid Williams, Mr. Dwayne Bruce, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Blame it on the braces. But anyway, Mr. Boudreaux, Mr. Ashante Abubakar, Employ PG. We are so thankful for them. Mr. James Henderson, our mentor, Ms. Naja Ishman, our judge, Tiffany Scott, who she's my colleague, Michelle Johnson. And if I forget anybody, please blame it on my head and definitely line on my heart, because you know, you guys are just amazing. And of course, yes, our faculty instructors. And as you can see, many people have invested and poured into our community health workers, and they are ready. They are ready. Miss Allison Aiken, Valora Bishop, Lawrence Carter, Dr. Sharon Hawks, Dr. Jamie Hill Daniel, David Harrington, Dr. Darrell Harvey, Deidre Spears Johnson, Naja Ishman again. And okay, we have Deidre once again. We also have Isha Taylor Kamara, Dr. Stacy Little, Mr. John O'Brien, Teron Powell, Dr. Christopher Rogers, of course, Tiffany, Ralph Williams, Ann Wiseman, Dr. David Coleman, and Dr. Donald Shell. And not only that, we have one more person to thank. We thank you, our audience, for being with us and sharing this time right here with us. Certainly, this pandemic underscores how we all are connected and how healthcare is no longer an individual concern, but it's a community and global concern as well. And now it's time to say goodbye Thank you so much for your participation, and I pray you have a healthy and blessed day.
Can we thank Ms. Crowell?
Thank you.
Yes, we
Ms.
thank you,
Praise
Ms.
the Lord.
Adrian.
Praise the Lord.
Thank you.
You guys were just awesome.
It was nice seeing all you guys too.
Hey, Brandon.
Nice seeing you, Brandon.
I'm ready. Hey, holla, Brandon.
Yeah.
I will do.
All right, then. So now I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I'm going to end this presentation for us all.
If I can ever convince him to trust me again.
Woo. Y'all give yourself a big hand clap. Yay! And look, hey, I'm still out there for you. So if you need my help, after I come back this weekend, just holler. And you know, I want y'all to keep Miss Bennett in prayer. Okay, keep her in prayer, lift her up, you know, because we all got life to deal with, and she's healing right now. So we just want to keep her lifted. Okay, we're family. All right. God bless you all, and have a blessed rest of the day.
You too.
Okay. Yeah, Miss Miller. Hey, I want that slide. I need that. I need to know where the desert is.